They didn't include the hot lifeguard lady. 0 out of 10. Live action remakes. Disney's current money-making strategy, and one that seems to be paying dividends. The businessman in me can't really fault Disney for making them when people keep throwing hundreds of millions of dollars at them. The creative in me, on the other hand, has some words. When it comes to movies like this, you have to ask, what's the point? Why should I watch this thing that's almost guaranteed to not look as good as the original? Have they made improvements to the story, or... And I guess that's what I'm most curious about with the Lilo and Stitch remake. So curious, I made the mistake of watching the original before watching this to figure out what they did and didn't change, and what was for the better and what was for the worse. I say mistake because I think you're gonna dislike this a lot more if you watch the original first. For an example of a change, when Stitch is escaping prison, the scene of his escape is made shorter and less action-packed. Why? Well, it would be more expensive and most of it is technically unnecessary for the plot. Does it make the movie worse? Yes. It's the damage to his ship that sustained during that battle that allowed the Federation to predict he'd crash land on Kaua'i. That's the Hawaiian island Lilo and Stitch is set on. Here they just predict where he's gonna go anyway, despite lacking the knowledge of the damage the ship will sustain or Stitch's genetic signature for tracking because they didn't take his blood out in the shortened version of the opening. In a way, this movie suffers from death by 1,000 tiny changes. Like, I'm not opposed to changes. The original wasn't perfect and it's possible to improve upon it. For instance, I think it makes more sense that Pleakley volunteered to stay on Earth to monitor Stitch than just being left behind. That's a change I liked. Let's see if there are more. Even before watching the movie, I was noticing changes that I immediately didn't like. In the trailers, you could see that dropped ice cream man was made into a native of Hawaii. Why? Not sure. Every reason my brain comes up with is immediately shut down as not being a good reason. Does it make the movie worse? Kind of. It reduces the subtle commentary on the tourism industry in Hawaii the original movie had by basically deleting the most recognizable tourist in the franchise who isn't a guest star from a crossover. The idea of Hawaii's relationship with the outside world is really baked into the original. Nani sings Aloha Oi as a goodbye to Lilo before social services comes to take her away. A song written by Hawaii's last monarch as a goodbye to her people while she was imprisoned by Americans as westernization crept into her country. Another change is the apparent removal of Gantu as the main villain. Why? Probably money. CGI is expensive. Can you imagine trying to make this look good in real life? And evidently, adjusting for inflation, this movie cost about 66% of the original's budget and at the time of writing the script is already $140 million more successful. Will this movie be better for his removal? And I don't mean in a financial sense. We'll see. It is funny to imagine that the live action movie could have more expensive animation than the animated one. The fact of the matter is that there are some things you can do in animation that live action simply can't get away with, both because it'd be too expensive and be too ridiculous to look at, like Jumba and Pleakley's disguises. That's why they shapeshift into human forms. The first thing I noticed about the remake is that it starts really fast. Despite having 23 minutes more runtime, the film breezes through Stitch's trial in a manner that reduces the impact, comedy, and even characterization of the scenes. It seems like Stitch is the one who's on trial and not just evidence of Jumba's malpractice. Though, to be fair, I put Jumba on trial just for that voice. I mean, they didn't even try. Did they not understand that the sound of the character's voice is also part of character design? It's actually quite amazing that this movie is longer, faster paced, cut down to the point of skipping integral, highly important scenes like the ugly duckling and Stitch reacting to having nothing to destroy, and yet I find it hard to think of a single thing of value that was added. Were those extra 23 minutes in the credit or something? I dislike and like the addition of Lilo hanging out in the hotel. It makes it less understandable that she was late, not just for dance practice, but a live show that her animated counterpart who immediately went to the dance she was late for from the ocean. But having her sneak into where the tourists are hanging out does go back to what I said about the tourism industry in Hawaii. The live action didn't even have time to explain why you shouldn't give fish tuna, which was very important in establishing how weird Lilo is, even while you're thinking, she's not wrong. Lilo being weird was part of her charm and characterization. Like, they somehow flanderized Myrtle of all people because in the original, even though she was a jerk, you'd get why a bunch of 6-year-olds would be put off by Lilo. And Lilo's violent, then immediately apologetic reaction is important for getting a sense of how she is. Here, Myrtle still needs to be mean to her, but Lilo is less extreme to elicit that reaction. All just to take the edge out of Lilo doing something wrong when she beat up her classmates. And then a social worker that wasn't Cobra Bubble showed up and I was like, I've seen enough, the animated movie's better. But I kept watching anyway. The next change that I found completely outrageous was the removal of Nani from the dog adoption scene. You know, that one that's a result of her seeing her sister wanting a friend and taking her to get one, and also shows how much she gets her sister over everyone else. It's so odd because it seems that they only left the scene of Lilo praying in because of the well-known meme of Lilo praying for an angel and Stitch rising out of the burning pit like a demon, but paid no mind to why the scene is actually important to the progression of the plot. Here, someone else brings the dog in and all I can think is, who the hell is this neighbor lady and why is she here to undermine the relationship between Nani and Lilo? Like, she's David's mom and he was surprisingly great in the original, but he never felt so intrusive to the plot. David's biggest scenes in the original were him being supportive of Nani's attempts to be Lilo's guardian and making Stitch feel left out as he was forced to acknowledge that he wanted to be a part of their family. So of course they practically cut him out of the scene and made it mean less by being about Nani getting a job giving surfing lessons instead of the sisters relaxing after a bad day. Because it's so much more meaningful that the reason Stitch wanted to risk going out into the water was that he wanted to do what he saw some random dog doing. If you want to make a point about why some people dislike live action remakes, just compare both Hawaiian roller coaster ride scenes. Neighbor Lady is an entirely poor addition to the plot because she both alleviates the stress Nani is under and undermines the relationship between the sisters, which makes her less sympathetic. And that's before we get to the ending. Like, Nani had to take Lilo everywhere because there was no one to leave her with in the original. Now there is someone, but Lilo is only left with her when it could make Nani's character less impactful instead of being more helpful to Nani's situation. And beyond that, the changes aren't even good. Stitch goes from something Nani got her sister to make her feel less lonely to something thrust upon her by her neighbor, even though the movies already raised concerns about Nani's inability to pay her bills. It all builds to this sense of increased dissatisfaction in the relationship between Lilo and Nani. Now Nani is even less accepting of Stitch because she didn't even want to get Lilo a dog. Plus there's all the talk about Nani wanting to be a marine biologist. I guess they wanted to give her a more intellectual goal she had to let go of for Lilo than just surfing. Cobra Bubbles did show up eventually. He's a paranormal alien investigator. Just suck all the fun out of the character, why don't you? At this point, the why completely escapes me. Like, Lilo and Stitch is an alien movie, so it was really clever to have the mysterious Men in Black type guy not actually be there for the aliens. The point was that he was an intimidating secret government agent looking guy who was actually a pretty good and understanding social worker, with the funny twist being that he used to be what he looks like and did work with aliens before, I guess, retiring to work in social services. Now he's just a secret government agent pretending to be a social worker to spy on Stitch. They unsubverted the subversion and in doing so kind of made his character pointless. It ultimately doesn't matter because in this movie, Bubbles' only role is to not tell the government about aliens so they don't interfere. In the original, the government did know about the aliens and were given good reason not to interfere. It just gives him a lackluster character arc and makes it so you could cut him out of the movie with minimal changes. They also changed the origin of Stitch's name from being just something Lilo came up with, and I don't know why. I think they wanted to give some logical explanation for it, but like, the point is that it wasn't very logical. I mean, it probably was, but I have no idea what Lilo was thinking, and that's the charm. Also, don't think I didn't notice that this is yet another example of a scene of the nuance of Lilo and Nani's relationship being sucked out, because we don't get to see that Nani is immediately completely accepting of the name where the woman working at the animal shelter was like, Stitch isn't a real name. It's all the little things that they keep taking out. Nani is just so much less fun in this movie, and I guess that's because she's more realistic. But in this movie about a found family adopting a destructive alien, the most realistic reactions aren't exactly what I'm looking for. Like, There is some narrative value in the fact we sacrifice seeing Nani's reaction to Stitch being a record player because she's too busy trying to pay the bills so she can keep Lilo, but I really wanted to see her face when she saw it anyway. And then they changed the Ohana Means family scene by making her less receptive to the idea and completely removing Stitch and his reaction from the scene. You know, people will accuse me of being blinded by nostalgia when I say this movie is worse, not just different, but these are all important and fun things that they cut out for no reason besides maybe Stitch is too expensive. I do want to take a moment to talk about an addition I did like. Because Gantu doesn't exist, Jumba plays the antagonistic role in the finale. And after his ship crashes in the ocean, Stitch's high density means he can't swim and Lilo can't carry him out. So he chooses to sacrifice himself for her. And after they pull Lilo out of the water, she uses the "no one gets left behind" line to convince Nani to go back and pick Stitch up. This is technically the payoff to the antagonism they've been building around Nani's character and her rejection of Stitch. I don't think it was worth it, but if I ignore that fact, this is a good payoff. But of course, now we have to talk about the biggest change to the story. Nani actually relinquishes guardianship of Lilo to social services. It's the most baffling thing I've ever seen. Do you have any idea how jarring it was to go from how hard they fought to keep the sisters together in the previous one to the point of essentially playing Earth and alien bureaucracy against each other in order to succeed, to this one going, yeah, Nani can't do this, Lilo should live with the neighbors we invented for this movie while she goes to college for her passion for marine biology that we also invented for this movie. I don't care if she can fast travel between Hawaii and California with a portal gun. That's not a realistic option for this movie that's made so many sacrifices on the altar of being more realistic, and that's a solution they came up with after they concluded that it would be best for the sisters to separate. It could very well be something they added later when they realized how terrible the ending would be received. It's a mid-credits scene, for God's sake. I mean, it'd be one thing if this was the ending to a regular original movie, but this is a remake of an existing movie that ended in a very specific way that they just ignored. And we have to take a step back and really think about what the movie's trying to say with this. Because it seems to me like they really wanted to conclude that Nani should give Lilo up. There are several changes to the movie that support the read that Lilo is a burden Nani can't carry, especially because they took out so much of the nuance of the relationship in favor of what? Jumba and Pleakley shenanigans? Also, apparently Hawaii offers natives great scholarship opportunities in marine sciences, so seriously, what were they thinking? I googled Institute of Marine Biology and you'll never guess what came up. If you really wanted Nani to have this plotline, why on earth would she be leaving Hawaii? I looked up the island they live on. The Hawaii Institute of Marine Biology is on the next island over, a 40-minute flight away. Or is it really a must that she goes to the promised land of California? I like to be more positive in my interpretations of what stories mean when they do things, but I really can't think of one here because it really feels like the movie's ultimate message was, yes, Nani can't keep Lilo. Follow your dreams even as they take you off your home island despite the fact that they really don't have to. Twitter has been full of people saying this movie is colonial propaganda, and I'm kind of inclined to believe them. They added so much to make the separation happen and took out everything that made sure it didn't. I'm almost surprised they didn't try to rewrite Aloha Oi to be about how great what was about to happen would be for Hawaii. I don't care how realistic the new ending is supposed to be. It sucks. Ohana means no one gets left behind, unless you don't have a portal gun, in which case you're gonna be a little left behind. And let's not forget that they basically cut 80% of the scenes that take place in Lilo's room, essentially excising how Lilo and Stitch bond over family and how much Stitch comes to desire to have one. They cut out the ugly duckling, they changed his reason for wanting to go surf with the family, they removed Jumba, essentially Stitch's father, and his observations on how Stitch is changing, they made Nani's relationship with Lilo's worse, and now this? Does this movie hate family? They did not miss the point. The point was obvious. They killed it. The original was about keeping the family together, and yes, I get it, you're still family even from a distance. I live on a different continent from most of my family. But they explicitly went out of their way to completely change the point of a story where the biggest goal was keeping a family physically together and made the failure state of the original into the right thing to do. If the Lion King remake made a bunch of changes to conclude that Simba should stay in the jungle paradise and Scar should be king of the Pride Lands, that's not a different take. That's butchering the original. And adding a new character to soften the blow doesn't help. She only exists to take Lilo. She doesn't provide any help with their troubles until then, and in the context of the remake, is the one who burdened the family with Stitch. In the original, David went out of his way to get Nani a job so she would be able to pass Bubbles' criteria. What do he and his mom do here? They made it so Nani wouldn't be happy unless she left, and then they said she should leave. The teleporting gun was just a bonus so we wouldn't burn Disneyland to the ground. Kindly miss me with that. Thank you to my patrons, A and Skyman. What were your thoughts on this movie? Tell me in the comments below, and while you're at it, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more content. Thank you, and good day.